Hello, welcome to the Rhode Island Small Business Coalition Small Business Forum. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm your host, David Dadekian, a small business owner here in Rhode Island. I own Eat Drink Rhode Island. So thank you again for coming on to the Facebooks, YouTubes, wherever you might find us at the Small Business Coalition and watching these shows. We've got another candidate guest for you here today. Aaron Guckian is running for Lieutenant Governor of the state of Rhode Island. And as always, if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, please like, subscribe, and all those things down there on the YouTubes. Aaron, welcome to the program. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So, as I said, you're running for lieutenant governor on the Republican ticket. For those folks out there who may not know, for some reason, you should know. November 8th is election day, so make sure you vote on November 8th. Though I believe at this point, all the cities and towns have early voting open, so you can go vote at your city hall or town hall or whatever board of canvassers your city or town has. But yes, November 8th is election day. And Aaron, as you're a relative, newcomer to this, you're not really a political operative for many years. Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and tell us who you are, what you've been doing?
Well, good morning. My name's Aaron Guckian. I'm a native of Rhode Island. I grew up in East Greenwich. My mother is a respiratory therapist. My father's a retired union plumber. And so I have an older brother who's in North Carolina. He's the CEO of the United Way. And, just love my time here in East Greenwich. I have three beautiful daughters who all attended East Greenwich Public Schools. And now my oldest is a freshman at Johnson & Wales. My wife's a professor at Johnson & Wales. She went to LaSalle and went to Syracuse and got her graduate degree out in California. Really proud of all of them. So in regards to my background, I'm on the Wall of Honor in East Greenwich. I went to Connecticut College, played basketball there, had a great run. We went to the NCAA tournament. I studied music. I got certified to teach. I minored in government. I learned German in Middlebury with the language school. Then went on to get a master's. I started at the Eastman School, and I traveled all over the country and the world to sing. And then I came back here and became a school teacher for a few years in North Kingstown, public school teacher. And then I drove a gentleman and his wife named Donald and Suzanne Kachiri. And I did that while I was in between in the summers teaching school. And lo and behold, he became governor. I became his special assistant. So I did that for 2 terms. So I do have, I understand the office of the governor's office. We went through the station fire 6 weeks into it. So I understand emergency management and the needs. You can't rush or teach experience. And I was proud to be by their side to navigate the state through probably the worst, other than maybe some of the hurricanes, one of the worst events that ever occurred in Rhode Island's history. My mom was a respiratory therapist at Kent Hospital that particular night. So It was a real nightmare. But I couldn't believe what the state did. The adjutant general, colonel of state police, National Guard. We all kind of surrounded each other, and I was proud to be with the governor and the first lady during that crisis. I then went on to banking. I rose to be a vice president of a bank. I got my MBA at night, so I have 2 master's degrees. I was a business banker. I did loans and lines up to $500,000 for those small business peoples, and I was also a branch manager here in East Greenwich, so I managed over millions of dollars at the branch. And then finally, I was at the Rhode Island Foundation. Most people know that's our community foundation. It's one of the oldest and largest community foundations in the country, founded in 1916 with $1 billion with a B in assets, all for charitable purposes. And I was a fundraiser there for 5 years and raising the millions of dollars to do more good with the great Neil Steinberger, who's the outgoing CEO. So that's my qualifications, which matters in this race.
Absolutely. That's a very wide and varied career there. It's fascinating to hear. And I certainly didn't mean to imply you didn't have some experience with the governor's office. I just meant you hadn't run for office yet. So I think a lot of people, understand what I meant there. But yeah, certainly, long experience there under Governor Carcieri. So Small Business Coalition. Obviously, we're small business focused. It certainly sounds like you've had some experience with that through the banking, but also through all your different relations there. Tell us what you think about the state of small business in Rhode Island and where you think that's going and what the lieutenant governor's office could do.
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is have meetings. My opponent seems to not have meetings. She doesn't get quorums. It's all documented, so that's not a negative sell. It's just the truth. So the first thing I learned at the Rhode Island Foundation, he has to convene a group of experts or the small business owners, listen, and then advocate. What I want to do is a help center, and I want to help people navigate through the state system. The restaurant owners that I know that deal with, have to interface with the state, it's laborious, it's frustrating. There's a lot
Yeah.
of fees. There's a lot of, so what I say is it's one thing to take people's taxes and fees, and that's bad enough. But if you take their time, it's even worse. So what I want to do is streamline that process. I want to do a single sign-on, one username and password across all departments. And I really want to listen. I want to go to all 39 cities and towns and talk to the town councils and mayors when elected. And I also want to, roll up my sleeves, have multiple meetings. I mean, you can at least have it once a month. I think 2 times a month with all our small business owners. Listen to their concerns and be a real problem solver. So it's one thing to talk about the problems. It's another thing to get to the solutions. And the only way you do that is you meet. I have a background, I have an MBA. And so I also worked with small businesses constantly to get SBA loans. And, that's experience. So the biggest thing that people have to understand with the Lieutenant Governor's office is, who do you want in charge if there's a crisis, or in the most recent case, an elevation of the Lieutenant Governor to the governor? It's a $13.6 billion budget. And, I'm proud to have, my qualifications, which is down the middle, practical, pragmatic solutions. I'm a moderate Republican. My favorite Republican is President Eisenhower. So people usually ask that question.
Yes, indeed. Certainly a better answer than some of the others, and unfortunately others in recent memory. That's just the way it is where we are right now. But thank you for that. I mean, certainly the convening part and the meetings. That's where the coalition came out of. We came out of, for those of you out there who are joining us, we came out of the pandemic and in meetings. Thankfully, not a perfect situation, but Zoom really certainly helped facilitate those types of meetings. And we still to this day are able to do large group gatherings on Zoom if required, because we can't all take our time to get together in one spot when we're volunteering our time. So I certainly understand where you're coming from there. Historically, the lieutenant governor's role doesn't really have a lot behind it. It's not very well staffed. It's not a huge position in our state's government. It primarily serves to be that, person and to be elevated if necessary. What do you see for resources for the lieutenant governor's office? What do you think you can do there?
Well, it's a $1.2 million budget, and you have 8 full-time employees.
Yep.
So, ceremonies are great, ribbon cuttings, groundbreakings. That's part of the job. But I think the most important part is to all of these committees that fall under the statute. One of it is small business, and it's important to meet. It's important to learn the concerns. And once you get those frequently asked questions, like I have with the Help Center, I'm going to pick up the phone or one of my staff, and we're going to give you a beginning, middle, and end. As a small business banker, I always said, a quick no is better than a prolonged maybe.
True.
So at first, it might be, Dave, I appreciate your concern. Right now, this is where we are. But now that I can get that, I can gather that data. And if that keeps coming, the same problem, the same fee, whatever, you can manage up to the legislature and the governor, who I have great respect for, and you can give them solutions. And especially you can get coalitions and convene, and then you can advocate. So, for example, we have our chambers; they do a great job. But why can't you have a lieutenant governor that leads the charge? And everything's going up right now. I believe it's because of these progressive policies, and my opponent is a progressive Democrat. You talked about the extremes of the party. Yes, there's a big, there's extreme right and there's an extreme left, and I'm a down the middle person. Everyone knows. I mean, a lot of people that interact with me across have been on all sorts of boards. I was the chairman of the Warwick Sewer Authority. I understand the problems, and I also know how to get to the solutions. And a lot of times, that's 1 or 2 phone calls from a guy like you, Dave, who's a business owner, to a person in the back office, we'll say the Department of Health. And then once you figure that out, the great employees of the state, we get them connected, and then we just keep working problems to get solutions. And I don't see that right now in our current appointed lieutenant governor. Her lack of meetings is shocking. Her progressive policies that she did in Providence, which was, defund police.
We're having a little problem with the sound there, Aaron.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So, the defund police, the progressive policies in regards to the parking meters that they instituted, they meaning the city council in Providence on Federal Hill. It's like, welcome to Providence. Here's a parking ticket. And, like my father, and probably I'll say for most people, most Rhode Islanders that I know, they'll drive around to try to get free parking before they valet. And, and that basically,
I don't know why that is, but you're right.
yeah. And like that prevents people going into the city. And so between the bike paths and the parking meters, I mean, it's really difficult to park down there. And anyone in Providence that I talk to, and I talk to a lot of business owners, they're frustrated. And then you have fees and taxes. They tax Social Security. We tax PPP. And I've talked to a small business owner over coffee this weekend, and he said, my competitors that are just across in Massachusetts, they don't have these taxes. So what do? They move to Massachusetts, and then they serve Rhode Islanders, and we don't get the tax revenue or the services. So I think I'm preaching to the choir here in the small business community. I don't think I know. And, there's a clear choice on November 8th, and actually we're in early voting, as you stated. It's either Aaron Guckian for lieutenant governor, a pragmatic, moderate, down the middle Republican who understands your problems and wants to work solutions, or a progressive, politician with lack of qualifications. Doesn't mean she isn't a good person. Doesn't mean she doesn't have a great personal story. It's just, you take my resume and you take her resume, and it's pretty obvious to me, who would be best to take over in a crisis, and who can, lead the small business community and advocate for them effectively at the State House.
All right, well, let's talk about your resume there from the perspective of being a banker and a small business owner. Tell us about that. Tell us about your interactions with small businesses and the types of businesses you worked with. You don't have to name particular businesses, but
Yeah.
but what's that experience like?
So yeah, after the governor's office, I worked briefly at the family court, and then I know I had a great mentor, the former president and chairman of Washington Trust Company, Joseph Mackerel, most people know, Pawtucket native. I had a great relationship with him. He said, Aaron, why don't you get into the management training program here at Washington Trust, and then we'll see where you go. So I did that. I was a teller. I was a banker. I learned how the banks work from the roots of it. And then I rose to business banker and then sales coordinator for Washington Trust Company. And I constantly interacted with small businesses, looked over their financials. I would tell them, look at their credit score and tell them whether they would qualify or not. Again, back to that quick no or prolonged maybe. And then I do a lot of referrals. I was credit, I would say credit trained at Washington Trust, not the way they used to, but, I used to work with some of the top bankers in the state, and we'd constantly be presenting different loans for small businesses. So I learned a lot there. And then I went on to Bank Newport. I was the branch sales manager here in East Greenwich, and I was responsible for staff and what branch managers have to do, which is, a lot of responsibility. You're doing wires and opening accounts and what have you, and it's cash management. So all of that experience matters. So let's just say, I'll take you, Dave. If you come to me as lieutenant governor and saying, I'm having a problem here, let's just say it's an SBA loan. Well, I know Mark Hayward very well. I've done SBA loans. I know exactly what to do. Aaron, I'm having this issue with this fee, and who are we going to get together? Well, I quickly talked to Aaron Donovan Boyle, who's the head of the Newport Chamber, or Liz Catucci, or Lori White at Providence Chamber of Commerce. We get a coalition and we advocate. So all of this experience matters in this race. I also, as you know, I was the governor's special assistant. So there's constant problems that I had to find solutions for in government. So, I know that office, and not too many people know the office the way I do, because I was there for 8 years.
All right, so two things there that I want to follow back on. One, obviously, you anticipated my question about the SBA. What's been your experience with the SBA and how your feelings on how it's been working, and include your thoughts on how it worked out through the pandemic.
Well, it was obviously, I mean, at the time I was at the Rhode Island Foundation, so I was raising money. So it's all kind of what I heard. I wasn't in banking when that
Right.
occurred
Sure.
to direct. Um, I know that there was a big pause, and then you had a lot of desperate small business owners, which make up most of our economy, obviously. And I thought there were a lot of misses. There was too much time. We had small businesses again that didn't get the PPP money. Then they were having problems getting it. Then they were taxed on it, even though weren't told they weren't going to be taxed on it in Rhode Island. And they didn't get the money out fast enough. In addition, then we got these federal monies that come from ARPA or the tax revenue because of inflation. And I would say that I don't think that the governor's office and what have you didn't get the money out quick enough. There's so many different ways that we can help our small businesses, and I don't think sitting on the money right now is the best thing to do, especially with inflation. I'll say this and then I'll get back to the questions. But one of my good friends is Angelica Gels down in West Warwick, that great diner, and she just said, to me that pretty soon her menu is going to have to be market price. And at first I thought it was a joke, and then I realized no, this isn't a joke because of the eggs and everything going up. And
Yeah. Everything.
again, that has to do with progressive policies. You might want that, and that's okay. Like we can discuss that, and I look forward to the debates. Finally, she's debating. She didn't want to debate. She was hiding, which I thought was an insult to the great Representative Deborah Giro, who I might differ politically, but she's a small business owner, advocated for years up there, especially for constituents in Jamestown, and she didn't show up. And then if you look at her, which I'll be talking about this week, is it's just her lack of meetings. She doesn't even show up. So how can you help anyone if you don't show up, which is part of life? So there's a real distinct difference. I think we're getting to great questions, but if you look at my resume and qualifications and you look at hers, there's a massive, massive gap. And that's what I'm trying to highlight today.
Interesting. So I wanted to follow up on the SBA though. You mentioned money's not going out fast enough, things of that nature. What do you think you can do as lieutenant governor in that case? Where do you see, especially if perhaps it's a split ticket because the way Rhode Island's you're not running together. If McKee is reelected as governor and you're a Republican as lieutenant governor, what do you think there?
Well, I mean, I've known Dan a long time. Obviously, I support Ashley Kalis for governor and Alan Fung for Congress. I say AAA helps on the way. Uh, that being said, I've known Dan McKee or Governor Dan McKee for a long time, for over 20 years. Um, and once the politics is over, when elected, I will work with the Speaker and the Senate President and the Governor the best I can. And when you're governor, I was there. I was an eyewitness to power. They have so much on their plate. So why can't you give a qualified lieutenant governor who won't overstep his bounds, who will meet with the small business and the long-term health care and the Rhode Island, EMA, to ensure that their voices are being heard, that they're getting the proper support, and when they're not, I'll gladly speak to the governor and the Speaker and Senate President, and I find them to be very reasonable people. They're moderate Democrats, so again, you have moderate Democrats and then this progressive wing of the party. You also have, the real strong right wing of the party, which we don't find here in Rhode Island as much. But, those people that are down the middle want to help Rhode Islanders and have the qualifications to do it. And, I look forward on day one to be working with the small business community. And if there's a problem, I'll go out and use that bully pulpit and say, we need to focus on this, in regards to the SBA and guarantees and what the small business needs. You need people that are up there that have a different mindset, that understand your problems and want to get to the solution. And that's why I have that help center that's going to help people navigate, that will also have either small business owners or people that understand small business. And, we can get solutions quicker because, there's so many little fees and little problems. I see these food trucks and all the things that they have to do to just sell food. And it's ridiculous. And it's not necessary. And I believe that I could be a very effective leader for the small business community. And that's why I'm here today.
And as personally as I know, that's streamlined from how it was 5 years ago, which is still pretty amazing. That it's still a lot of hoops and a lot of problems for those
Yeah, and it's
folks.
faster. And it's so you're going to get taxed, you're going to get feed. We're going to take your time with all of these, um, all the things that you need to do just to open the doors, and then we're going to tax you. It's insane. And so what's happening is people are moving, right? People move to Massachusetts when they retire because it's tax and Social Security. Where do they go? They go to Florida or down south. And so it doesn't work. And if you want to get into education, Providence is the worst schools, some of the worst schools in the country. All these numbers just came out nationally. I know
Yeah.
that there's debate, but I mean, it's reading, writing, and arithmetic. Let's get back to the basics. Let's try to streamline and I'm a public school teacher, and that all affects small businesses. And another thing I want to talk about is getting shop and home ec back into the schools. I talked to machinists. My father's a plumber. I think the average age is 56, 57, whatever it is across the country. We need to get back to these basics. Home ec, which obviously is for we having problems with restaurants and supporting with the staff. It's one thing with these tech schools, and they're great. But if I'm a 12, 13-year-old kid and I'm in one of the public schools or wherever, you don't want to leave your friends. And I just remember, I mean, I was a musician, so, I played the trumpet and sang, so I was in the band. But I know most people, they were doing woodworking, carpentry, looking at the blueprints, and that prepares everyone for the blue collar work that's so important, and also home ec, right? And that gets you back to the restaurants. So these are the
Yeah.
type of common sense solutions. They're not being talked about by the lieutenant governor's office. She's off either doing her own thing, not meeting, and or running the ceremonies and tweeting about them with no qualifications in regards to these issues we're talking about today, or very little, I should say. So, Aaron Guckian for lieutenant governor, and I just have to keep reiterating that point because that's why I'm standing up for Rhode Island, because I couldn't take it anymore. My wife said, you got to get up and give people a good choice. I am. I'm actively fundraising. I've raised over 125,000. I'm the only Republican that's in the matching state funds, and I'm proud of it. There's a lot of hoops that you have to do, which is important. A lot of reporting. You have to raise a lot of money, and you have a lot of donors. So that
Yeah.
should show you because, and I will highlight one other thing. The last report came out that the appointed lieutenant governor had $6,000 on hand and over $100,000 in debt. I have over 100,000. I lent my campaign 10,000. Just like, I got skin in the game, just like any small business. But I mean, if that's how she's going to run her campaign, how she's going to run our state, and vice versa. So these are really important things for our small business owners to hear. I'm going to debate her finally on the radio Wednesday at 4:30, and I can't wait. And it doesn't mean that she isn't a good person. This has nothing to do with her personally. It has everything to do with qualifications and how we can help our small businesses in our state. And I believe that Aaron Guckian will be the right choice for lieutenant governor on November 8th.
Thank you. Regarding the date, the debate will already passed by the time this airs, so you can check it out. I'm sure on the radio website.
Yeah, the other one taped the Friday before the election with Gene Valicenti on 10. It will be running that weekend. So I really, encourage people to listen. You might not agree with me, I want to vote for me. But I will say this, again, what's the biggest thing about the lieutenant governor? Who's going to take over in a crisis? And I've already articulated, why Aaron Guckian will be the right person for the job.
Well, I think and to your point, listen. I think that's it. I think that's why we do this interview series so that people can hear people's, find out about the candidates, hear their thoughts, hear their issues that are close. In our case, to small business. I'm sure you have conversations about other topics with other groups, but listening is extremely important. And then make sure you go out and vote. As we both said, early voting going on now. November 8th is the election. Any other topics you want to touch on before we go, Aaron? What anything else we haven't touched on? I know we didn't really talk about. We kind of went around it a bit. We talked about education and the CTE programs and feeding into employment, but the employment issue is really a huge issue. Any thoughts there?
Well, yeah,
with
One,
finding employees?
first, like I said, get shop and home ec so people are prepared when they get into the workforce. We need to work with workforce development. Steve Kitchen over in New England Tech and all the leaders. But the biggest thing is, we need to meet. If you don't meet and you don't hear the concerns, then you can't advocate correctly. You can't manage that data and be effective up there at the State House. There's a vacuum right now in the Lieutenant Governor's office. You talk to any small business owner, they're just their meetings aren't happening. The voice isn't being heard, and it's really frustrating. In regards to, we need to incentivize. I don't think that word's used enough. There's plenty of ways that we can incentivize, especially with the monies that are available from the federal government. So why not get creative? Why not talk to business owners like you, David, and say, okay, what can we do to help you? And it might be something like a public-private partnership with one of the universities. I've got my MBA from Johnson & Wales University. They got a great culinary school. What can we do to try to keep them here? And there might be a tax break. It could be, some money off at their schooling. Whatever it is, to try to encourage and help them to stay in Rhode Island. And the only way you can do that is to meet, convene, advocate, and help. And that's what the Help Center is all about. I know it's simple, but right now we're not finding the simple things. The small things aren't being addressed. And I found it's like broken shoelaces, right? I can deal with sometimes the big things, but those small things can be so difficult. And I hear all the small business owners. I really, really want to be a problem solver. And I know, like, this occurs with me all the time, whether it's in long-term healthcare. People say, Aaron, can you help me? And even at the market, I always use this reference, but it's true. I'm a 6'7", I'm a big guy. People say, hey, Aaron, can you help me with the peas on the top shelf? And I get it to the older lady. But that's the type of thing I want to do at the State House, is get this help center, make it, access maybe 5 to 9 after hours so people can call and have somebody to document their issue, and then use, CRM, customer relationship management, for the small business owners out there, get them in a pipeline and start getting wins, and then showing the legislature, okay, this is what we're doing. This is how it's working. And I know that they'll jump on board because they want to help their constituents. But we really got to fight back from these progressive politics, these progressive politicians like the appointed lieutenant governor who just wants to tax and create problems for our small businesses. And like the parking, how Providence is being run right now, the safety, the defund police. People don't want to go to Providence. People don't want to go to the inner city. And I know, like East Greenwich right now, Main Street was just sort of a small little Main Street when I grew up. And now it's almost like a night district, and it's great, but people don't want to go to our capital city, and that's problematic due to safety, because she wanted to defund police, tax. She wanted to tax the East Side, in 2020 with the homestead. I mean, it's just on and on and on. So I think there's a clear choice between Aaron Guckian and the appointed lieutenant governor, and I hope people vote for me on November 8th. And also, if you can support me at Guckian for LTGov.com. That's Guckian for FORLTGov.com. Every dollar matters, and it's matched by the state because I've done the hard work. And that's what I want to do. I want to work hard for the people of Rhode Island.
Thank you, Aaron. We'll link that up down below. As always, also down below, you can like and subscribe to this video. I think that was a great summary, Aaron. Really appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Aaron Guckian. He's running for lieutenant governor of the state of Rhode Island, and vote on November 8th or earlier if you choose. Thank you for your time, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you, David, and thank you for doing what you do, convening and getting people together. You're a great advocate for the small business. You have great experience, and I can't wait to work for you when elected. So please, call me immediately, and let's get to work and get some solutions out there for the small business community. So thank you so much for the interview today, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, and good luck.
I appreciate it.
So that was another great interview. That's our last of our candidate interviews for this season. We got one more week when this goes up on November 1st. You got one more week until the election, and then we'll return to more of our programming involving business support groups and officials that are part of our administration that help small businesses. As always, you can join the coalition at risbc.org. There's a free sign up, but you can also join our portal. It's now open. We've got all sorts of great material there. You can sign up for more than just the newsletter, but you could join and with a small fee for the coalition. We really would like to have as many small businesses as possible in our coalition, statewide, any small business. That's the whole key. So risbc.org. And thank you again for watching. Take care.